Rotors that have thickness variations, excessive runout, scoring, or hard spots will have to be machined prior to reinstallation. There are two popular brake lathes, the traditional brake lathe and the on-car brake lathe. Always read the machine manufacturer's instructions prior to operating the lathe. A typical procedure, regardless of the type of lathe, is to mount the rotor to the lathe and back away the cutting bit. Rotate the disc one revolution to make sure there is no interference. Make a scratch cut by positioning the cutting bit near the center of the rotor and allowing it to cut about 1/1000th deep. Stop the lathe and inspect the scratch cut. The mark should be uniform around the surface of the rotor. If the scratch is a crescent, loosen the arbor and rotate the rotor 180 degrees and resecure the rotor. Repeat the scratch cut about 1/4 of an inch from the first cut. If the second scratch matches the first and is still not complete, the rotor has significant runout but is properly centered in the lathe and you can begin machining. To machine the rotor, make a scratch cut as you did to confirm that the rotor is centered on the machine. Then set the depth of cut dial indicator to 0. Move the cutting bit to the deepest groove without changing the depth of cut setting. Then use the depth of cut dial to bottom the tip of the cutter in the deepest groove. The reading on the dial indicator now shows the amount of material that will have to be removed. Add 1/1000th of an inch to that number to determine your total cut to true the drum. If the total amount of material to be removed is greater than 15 thousandths, the rotor should be resurfaced in 2 or more smaller passes. Crossfeed is the speed that the cutting bit moves across the surface of the rotor. It is usually set at 6 to 10 thousandths for rough cuts and less than 2 thousandths for finishing cuts. Lathe speed should not be higher than 150 RPM during either rough or finish cutting. The depth of scoring or the amount the disc is out of round will determine the number of cuts that will have to be made to return the drum to true. Never take more than 15 thousandths off at a time. The depth of cut can be adjusted with the depth of cut dial. After machining the rotor, finish by applying a non-directional finish using a sander on the rotor surface while the rotor is still mounted on the lathe. Finish by removing the disc and once again measuring the thickness with a brake micrometer. If the disc has been machined to under the minimum thickness, it must be replaced.